Good afternoon, Abu Dhabi. The final Fight Island event is here. It is UFC 254. It is Khabib versus Gaethje. But first, Chael P and I have got to get you ready for the action. Sit back and relax. Ariel the Bad Guy, up now.
Khabib is the best in the world. He's 28-0. There's no other challenge I want right now. I want to fight him.
The most violent man in the most violent sport.
Oh! How is he taking these shots?
Yo, you about to witness greatness in the making.
Khabib Nurmagomedov mauls people.
Cause I seen it all, been through it all. It's all about the way you stand up, not how you fall.
There's the tap. Khabib Nurmagomedov has finished Conor McGregor tonight.
And down goes Vic.
Holy smoke, what a knockout.
I'm ready for war, I said I'm ready for more. You can't stop me, you can't stop me. I'm gonna make it, you know that I'm gonna make it. If they wanna go to war, then come and bring it on. I'ma give it my all, you know I give it all. You can't stop me.
Welcome back to a brand new edition of Ariel the Bad Guy right here on all the free platforms in the world. Yes, I said in the world. I'm Ariel, and that's the bad guy, Chael P. Sonnen. And Chael, I don't know if you know this, but UFC 254 is actually going on right now as we speak.
I'm counting the moments, Ariel. Of course I knew that. I'm watching it in the background. Now get to your point, partner.
Okay, the point is the pay-per-view. Yes, I said the pay-per-view exclusively on ESPN Plus. Pay-per-view begins at 2 p.m. Eastern. 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific over there in Oregon. And you'll get a 6-fight main card today. Headlined, of course, by Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje for the undisputed UFC lightweight title co-main event. Robert Whittaker against Jared Cannonier, potential number one contender fight in the middleweight division. Chael, this is big time stuff. It's a rare matinee, if you will, for the UFC. And anytime Khabib Nurmagomedov fights, it feels like a big deal. It feels like the eyes of the sporting world watch when the Eagle returns. And we haven't seen him in quite some time. It's been 13 and a half months. So let's start with Khabib on this here program, Chael. Let's start with Friday morning's weigh-ins. He made weight. Everyone's seen the clip, but he was relieved. He was the first one up. He was rubbing his face. Clearly, he was a little nervous. There are some people who thought they were a little quick on the draw with the scale, but officially he made weight. What did you make of the whole scene there? And does that, and I don't want your prediction just yet, but what you saw at the weigh-ins, does that at all change how you feel this fight is going to go down later on this afternoon?
No, it certainly does not. And I'll tell you, I've been a little surprised how much people do make of weigh-ins with any fighter. We're talking Khabib now, but with any fighter who looks a little drained or a little bit depleted. I mean, look, that's largely what a weigh-in is. These guys pull down, they make it just barely. That's professionalism. If he was 2 or 3 pounds underweight, you'd wonder why he spent that extra time in the sauna or the extra time jogging it off. Look, that is not traditionally how a weigh-in was done. You alluded to the fact that the scale was going up. For those of us who have watched the clip, that is traditionally not what making weight would be considered. Either way, this is official, and he's had plenty of time to recover. It is a non-issue.
There are a lot of people out there who believe that Justin Gaethje is his toughest opponent to date, at least on paper. Skill set versus skill set. Gaethje poses the most problems for Khabib. Do you agree with those people?
I think that that's very fair. Look, Javier Mendez, who is Khabib's coach, says that Gaethje's number 2. He said that the harder challenge was Conor McGregor, but stylistically, Ariel, they're very different. Justin Gaethje has great wrestling, even if he uses it defensively. Justin Gaethje does not get taken down. Historically, Khabib wins fights by taking people down.
All right. And so there are also some people, including myself, Chad, I don't know if you know this, but I'm somewhat of a fight connoisseur. I like to fancy myself as such, who believe that the key to this fight for Justin Gaethje is to keep it in the center of the octagon. Mainly, don't get pressed up against the cage. If you get pressed up against the cage against Khabib Nurmagomedov, it leads to trouble. But you'll recall when Conor McGregor fought Khabib 2 years ago, took him down in the middle of the cage. Conor got back up, and a lot of people, including myself, think that Gaethje is better wrestling, MMA wrestling, than Conor McGregor. Of course, Gaethje, an All-American at a Division I school in Northern Colorado. Do you think if, in fact, Gaethje can somehow keep this fight in the center of the octagon and most importantly, away from the fence, that he can have a lot of success against Khabib.
That will help tremendously. Listen, Khabib's takedowns look beautiful and they look sophisticated, but Ariel, they are by the numbers. Step 1, push you into the fence. Step 2, get his hands locked. Step 3, entangle your legs. If Justin Gaethje can throw off any one of those steps, at least in theory, he can stop the takedown. You were talking about not getting his back on the fence. I fully agree with that. Khabib was a pressure fighter at some point, is going to put Justin into the fence, but now he has to go to step 2. Don't let him get that body lock where he grasps his own hands. If you fail at both of those steps, don't let him entangle your legs. Look, these guys that try to stop the takedown in its entirety are overthinking this. You've got to make it a little bit more simple. And to your point, stay off the fence is a great start.
Okay, so a lot has been made of what Khabib and his family have been through over the past few months with the passing of Khabib's father, Abdulmanap, who obviously wasn't just his father, his best friend, his coach, his mentor. They couldn't have been closer. And there was even a little bit of talk, unfortunately, after his father passed away due to complications from COVID-19, that Khabib might walk away because they were that close. Ultimately, he decided to resume his career. From what you've seen out of Khabib, in particular this week, do you feel like this is a guy fighting with a heavy heart? Do you feel like this is a guy who's not 100% there, who's dealing with a lot of emotions, who mentally is maybe somewhere else? What is your read on Khabib from where you're sitting in Oregon?
Ariel, my response to you is speculative at best, but I have noticed this. This is a very much a reenactment of Mike Tyson and Cusimano, or even a Rocky-esque moment. It's part of the story, and I think that we're appropriate to bring it in because I know Khabib wants to pay homage. I know that he has a nostalgic effect and wants to represent his father. He's a very prideful man. I am noticing that Khabib largely is putting on a game face. I have been in Khabib's spot, and you can't go around and cry in public when you have another task at hand. You've got to keep things in their lane. I think Khabib has been very mature, and I think he's shown a real mental toughness. That's what I think.
All right. On the flip side, we have Justin Gaethje, who looked phenomenal against Tony Ferguson. Dare I say he has looked phenomenal ever since he lost 2 fights in a row. He's only lost 2 fights in his pro MMA career, but once he lost those 2 fights to Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, I think a lot of us, including myself, thought, all right, this is Justin Gaethje. We have seen the best of Justin Gaethje. He will beat the Michael Johnsons of the world. He will hang in there and have fun fights against the Dustin Poiriers of the world, but his style is too wild. He's too reckless. He takes too much damage. This is kind of where he's at. He's a World Series of Fighting champion, but he'll never be a UFC champion. But then he comes back. He knocks out James Vick, and he goes, that was number 1 of 4 straight. Ends with the Tony Ferguson victory, has other impressive victories over the likes of Edson Barbosa. And all of a sudden, he feels and looks like a different fighter. We were talking about Brian Ortega 2.0 last week. It feels like we are watching Justin Gaethje 2.0, a lot more calm, a lot more collected, a lot more patient with his striking, doesn't take as much damage. Have you been impressed with the way in which he has reinvented himself? And you believe that there is a lot to this 2.0 idea? Is he a vastly different fighter than the one that we saw early on in his MMA career?
If I was to admire anything about Justin Gaethje, Ariel, surprisingly, it wouldn't be the punches, it wouldn't be the kicks, it wouldn't be that grittiness and his ability to extend a match and get other guys tired and make them quit. It's his ability to compete. No matter who the opponent is, he does not leave his skills in the locker room. He does not wilt. If you go back and look at that Tony fight, he was over, and I'm talking Gaethje, was over a 2-1 underdog. I think the most surprised guy in the building that night was Justin Gaethje, but good things happen when you bring your tools with you. Good things happen when you don't look at your opponent, get enamored, and freeze up. One thing that he will do that he has always done consistently, Ariel, we could talk the X's and O's all days. What's most important on Justin Gaethje is he knows how to compete. I fully expect him, for better or worse, to bring his best skills with him tonight.
And this has nothing to do with the fight, but could we just talk about this? Because I know you like, the game as well. There are some people who, when they win the interim title, they put the title over, right? They kind of make believe that they are the real champ, and that's fine. You could do that. You have every right to do that. I love what Gaethje has done this week. It's been a little different, right? He has said, no, I don't want to hold the belt. That's the real belt. He's paying full respect to Khabib. He's not putting over the interim title. I like that he's done this, because usually you'll have the other guy stand there and say, yeah, I'm defending my belt and blah, blah, blah. What do you make of how Gaethje has handled this whole interim championship thing?
I take it as insincere. It's like when a guy insults himself. Oh, look at my haircut. It's terrible. So all of his classmates will know, oh, no, you look really great. I take it as insincere. I don't think he's doing it to be nice to Khabib at all. I think he's doing it for a self-serving compliment to himself. Look, either way, the interim belt is out. The undisputed one's up. We can make all we want of it. These guys have to fight.
Wow, I love that. I wasn't expecting that. You're not buying any of this. You think it's fake modesty, false modesty.
Yes, it's like a fake compliment, a fake insult to yourself to get somebody else to pat you on the back. The fact that he's the interim champion is very real. Many guys work their whole lives and never even get an opportunity at it. The fact that he got it and attempted to dismiss it, I thought was rude, if you really want to know.
Oh, I love this. This is tremendous. Okay, Chael, I have to ask you about this. A big storyline going into this, and it's a fantastic fight, and there's so many different elements that we could talk about regarding this fight. But we're talking about 29-0 and then 30-0 and the potential retirement fight and him walking away, Khabib walking away potentially not. George St. Pierre is out there. Who knows if Khabib, gets on the microphone afterwards and calls out George and all of that. If you could book Khabib's swan song, if in fact it ends at 30-0, who would he fight?
Okay, well, look, it's got to be George St. Pierre. I mean, if you're asking me for just a perfect and Chael has a wish, I'm going to go with George St. Pierre. Now, Dana White shed a little bit of light on this. He was talking about Ferguson versus Chandler, and no, that fight is not made or announced, but Dana said if that fight were to come together, that Dana would view the winner of Ferguson versus Chandler as next for Khabib. I thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay. I know that they're trying to make that fight for December 19th.
Oh, by the way, where were you just scratching? You got a dog right next to you? Who were you just scratching?
You heard that?
Well, I saw you reach down, but it was like too far to be your leg. I'm just wondering, what, you got a pet next to you?
Listen, I tried to hide it. Clearly, I didn't do a good job of that. No, that was my daughter, Claire, who is turning 4 next week. So she thinks that she can rule the household. It is the afternoon after all, Chael.
Ariel, I feel as though I owe the lovely Claire a explanation here. I was not comparing her to a household pet. I couldn't see her. Hello, Claire.
I mean, she's not that tall, if we're being honest. So, like I said, good time to remind people that this is an afternoon card. So the kids are up right now. We are not in Abu Dhabi. And so that's why she so rudely walked into, I thought I did a good job of hiding it, but clearly, my arms are so long. Clearly, I did not do a good job of that. So in any event, yes, I just wanted to add to what you were saying. Yeah, December 19th, they've been talking about Chandler and Ferguson fighting, but they're also trying to get Khamzat Chimaev a main event. It's almost like a race. Which fight can they book first for that last main event slot on December 19th. So we'll see how that pans out. We also know Michael Chandler successfully weighed in on Friday morning, but as of right this moment, knock on wood right over here, if you believe in that sort of thing, his services not needed. And by the way, can I just say, I think Chandler just being involved in this discussion, I think him being attached to this fight, even though it was somewhat much maligned, polarizing decision to put the guy who wasn't the champion of Bellator in the spot, I think he's gone the rub from all of this, right? Like, I feel like this has actually elevated Chandler a little bit, just being in the conversation with the likes of Khabib and Gaethje. What do you think?
Oh, I think it certainly has, and I think he did everything right. I don't really like the bully mentality that was coming down on Chandler about 8 or 9 days ago to go in and fight Islam. When RDA got pulled out because of COVID, I didn't think that was right. Look, Chandler agreed to do something, and it's not that wonderful of a spot. He's agreeing on a moment's notice to step in against either Gaethje or Khabib, a striker or a grappler. I mean, two total polar opposites. Nobody would agree to that, but he did, and I'm with you. He deserves some credit.
All right. I'm glad that we agree. I think we would also agree on this. Chael, a great member, a talented member of our production team, Michael Wansover, a big wrestling fan, by the way, put together this phenomenal piece where he got the legendary basketball player Vince Carter. Are you familiar with Vince Carter?
Yes, I know Vince. Know the name.
Okay. I thought maybe you knew him personally. I would have gotten very excited there. Half man, half amazing, the human highlight reel, one of the all-time great and most exciting players in NBA history. Vince Carter voicing a video essay on Justin Gaethje. This is phenomenal stuff. These are my two worlds colliding here, Chael. I was so excited when I saw this. It's a phenomenal piece. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this. Vince Carter putting over the great Justin Gaethje. This is great stuff. Take a look.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Vince Carter, aka Vinsanity. 8-time NBA All-Star, 22 years in the league, and more than 1,000 dunks. Why lay the ball up when you could take off, spin 360 degrees, and finish strong?
Let's go home!
Why go around a defender when you could go up and over one? There's a reason my nickname was half man, half amazing. Even now, happily retired, I'm not willing to give that name to someone else on the court. But in the octagon, well, that's another story. Now introducing the highlight, Justin Gaethje. Gaethje has a flair for the dramatic. 9 post-fight bonuses in his first 7 UFC fights, making 50 G's each. He's got speed, leaping ability, and power, and all that is done with style. There's a whole lot of stake with that sizzle. You better take him seriously, or it's over, ladies and gentlemen. It's over. Saturday at UFC 254, Gaethje faces his toughest test to date. Undefeated lightweight champion, Khabib Nurmagomedov. If I were you, I'd tune in. You might just see a highlight we'll be replaying for the next 20 years.
Once again, great job by producer Michael Wansover. And how about Vince Carter with that read? Phenomenal stuff. I loved everything about it. Here, you take a look at some more of Justin Gaethje's success. By the numbers, look at this. I mean, the number that really jumps out at me, 59.2% striking accuracy, the highest in UFC lightweight history. When you consider the great fighters that have competed at 155, that is a tremendous stat, and I think really tells the story of how good Justin Gaethje is. All right, and now let us say hello to the former American League Rookie of the Year, the former World Series champion back in 2017. Dare I say, the best player in Major League Baseball today. And the only reason why he's not playing later today is because he said, you know what? I can't miss UFC 254, so I'm going to sit this one out. And I want to talk to my guy, Ariel Helwani. Of course, I'm talking to friend of the program, Carlos Correa, who's kind enough to join us. Carlos, how are you?
I'm doing great, brother. Thanks for having me.
It's good to talk to you again. And, you know, obviously we're not in the same room right now, but I feel like smoke emanating from my screen because you were on fire, my man. You were killing it in the bubble and the shortened season and all that. I know it didn't end the way you guys wanted to, and we'll get to the fighting in a second, but I just have to ask, overall, are you happy with this season? Like, do you feel like you guys did and maybe a little bit in terms of shutting a lot of the doubters up?
Oh, absolutely. I'm proud of the team and what we accomplished. You know, when we show up to the summer camp, we had Justin Verlander going down. We had our closer Osuna going down. Alvarez, our DH and Rookie of the Year, going down. A lot of players that we needed throughout the regular season were down, and we're able to be one hit away from getting to a World Series again. So, yeah, I mean, we faced a great team in Tampa in the ALCS, and we were down 3 games. And we had a meeting in the clubhouse. We said, hey, we're not ready to go home yet. We got to do something about it. They got a great team. They're playing great baseball. But, you know, we can come back. If there's one team that can come back, it's us. And we're able to come back, tie the series. Unfortunately, we lost Game 7. Like you said, we wanted to win the World Series, but now I get to watch UFC 254, baby. Let's go.
That's right. All right. So you're not in the. Could I just get like, you want the Rays to win because they beat you? Is that how it works? Like, would you rather them win?
Honestly, I don't care who wins. I'm not even watching the games.
I'm not
even watching the games. Oh, no.
You're out.
No.
You're done.
I'm watching MMA now. I'm back. I'm transitioning to MMA now in the off season. No
All right.
baseball.
So let's talk a little MMA, because the last time we had you on this program, you called it. You said Justin Gaethje was going to be Tony Ferguson. Then you went on your social media and you rubbed it in all our faces and whatnot. And so now this is the fight that came as a result of that performance. It's Gaethje versus Khabib, undisputed title fight. You were very high on him. So I want the Carlos Correa breakdown. I know you are a student of the game. You like the analysis. Give me the breakdown of this fight as you see it.
Well, I got to say, I love both of them. I love Khabib. I love Gaethje. I picked Gaethje against Ferguson on that fight, and I thought he was going to win easy, and he did. And I got the same feeling for this fight, man. I think Khabib is going to make it look super easy. Ooh. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, this is Khabib's toughest test, but I feel like they say that every time he's going to fight for the title. I think Khabib's wrestling and grappling is so elite. Gaethje has never seen that level of grappling inside the octagon. It's all been standing and it's all been strikers. I've heard Gaethje saying, and it's quoted, saying that he doesn't wrestle because he gets tired. I was watching the Embedded episode 4 yesterday, and he said that he's not good from the bottom, but he's good getting out of the bottom. And, you know, in freestyle wrestling, you can lock your hands to secure your opponent down, to pin him down. And in MMA, you can do that, and that's what Khabib's gonna do all day. Everybody knows the plan. Everybody knows Khabib's gonna take you down and maul you. Nobody has been able to stop it. And if you got a guy saying that he gets tired of wrestling and he's not good from the bottom, I think he's in for a long, long night. If Khabib's gonna go out there for 25 minutes and do his thing, man, and I think it's gonna be an easy fight for Khabib.
Wow, easy fight. You're the first
Yeah,
person that
as
I've
much
heard.
as I love Gaethje.
Wow, easy fight. Now, do you think he stops Justin Gaethje?
Yeah, absolutely. He's gonna submit him in the third or fourth round. I think that if Khabib does what he did against Barbosa, which was set the pace, make Justin Gaethje fight at the pace that he wants him to fight. If you saw the Barbosa fight, Khabib was completely sprinting towards him. Barbosa had no space. Khabib was all over him, taking him down, mauling him. If Khabib can dictate the pace, I think Gaethje is gonna have a lot of trouble. If you saw in the Ferguson fight, he didn't get tired because he was fighting at his own pace. You know, he was hitting Ferguson with some big shots. Ferguson, was hurt at times. So he was able to dictate that pace and control the fight. I think if Khabib is able to dictate the pace and put pressure on him, he's gonna get tired. And like we saw Poirier and Conor, at the end of the day, he's gonna crumble and submit.
And by the way, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, I do believe the first time we ever spoke, you told me Khabib is your favorite fighter, right?
Absolutely.
So are we biased here with our analysis, or are we 100% down the line?
You can see it like that, but I think, I honestly believe that's what's going to happen in this fight. A lot of people say, oh, Gaethje has a wrestling background and all that. But Ariel, we both know you have a baseball background. That don't mean you can come in the postseason and strike me out.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? So
I actually think I could. I've got a mean 54-mile-per-hour knuckleball that you have never seen before, my man. You have no idea where I come from, all right?
Hey, it's my off season, so we should make it happen. Record a video.
I don't know about that. I won't do that. But you know what? That's actually fascinating that you bring that up, because I wanted to ask you that you're a high level athlete. I mean, I don't joke when I say you might be the best player in the world right now playing baseball.
Thank you.
Let's say you're going up against, I don't know, Blake Snell, right? If you're going up against Blake Snell, you have a scouting report, right? You watch video, you watch tape on him, correct? Am I wrong?
Absolutely.
Okay. Justin Gaethje, said earlier this week, I watched no film on Khabib. Yeah, sure, I watched his fights as a fan, but from the moment I got this fight till Saturday, I watched no film on this guy. Does your head explode when you hear something like that? Why would you not watch any film on maybe the most dominant fighter in the history of the sport?
I heard that, and honestly, I don't believe it. I think he studied the film. When I saw him training, he was training every position that Khabib puts his opponents on. So he definitely studied, or Trevor Whitman did the studying for him. But they definitely studied, and they definitely know every move that Khabib's gonna do out there. And like you said, I studied pitchers. I studied Blake Snell. I studied Glass now before facing them. But if the pitchers execute their plan and they put the ball where they want it to be, I'm not gonna have success. I live off their mistakes. So Justin Gaethje can watch all film that he wants and execute his plan, and he might be successful. But Khabib's gotta make mistakes in order for him to be successful. So it's gonna be a tough fight for Gaethje, just because of the fact that he's never been on the mat with an elite wrestler in MMA, and Khabib is the best we've ever seen. So it's gonna be a first time for him. We all talking about if he can stop the takedown, but nobody has been able to stop it.
Now, let me ask you this. As a fan of the sport, but also as a big Khabib fan, if he gets to 29-0, if your prediction comes true later today and he extends his streak to 29-0, and he does in fact say, I'm done after 30, right? This has been the talk leading up to this fight. 30-0, I'm going to walk away. Who do you want number 30 to be against?
There is only one name, and that's Conor McGregor. I've heard the GSP conversations. As an MMA fan, I don't want to see that fight, because I know GSP is not on his prime. I know he doesn't want to fight. He said in multiple interviews. So I really don't want to see that fight. I think Khabib's gonna maul him, just because he's past his prime. And I don't want to see the Ferguson fight anymore, just because it's fallen through so many times, and then he lost to Gaethje. The hype is not there as much anymore. I think the Conor McGregor fight, how people say Conor had a 2-year layoff and he was not focused and he was on the proper 12 and all that. I think a focused McGregor can give a better fight, but it's still going to be the same outcome. But at the same time, it's going to be a great pay-per-view to buy, man.
I'm happy you say that, because I do believe the rematch would be a lot closer than the first fight. And I don't think Conor gets enough credit for winning a round against Khabib. And I know there's no moral victories, but even in the first round, it was a little closer than people remember. I do think if he, had everything in order, that rematch would be fascinating theater. Now, I also want to ask you about the co-main event because there's massive stakes attached to it. Robert Whittaker against Jared Cannonier. A lot of people think if Cannonier wins, he would be next for Israel Adesanya. Whittaker gets a little funky there because he just lost to him a year ago. But from an X's and O's standpoint, this particular fight, Whittaker, one of the best middleweights in the world. Cannonier has won 3 straight since dropping down to 185. How do you see it playing out?
Oof. This is, Cannonier, one punch power type of guy. Whittaker puts it all together better than anybody out there. Usually I go with the guy that puts it all together. But this time I got to say that I saw Whittaker getting dropped by Till, and he was not even, clipped clean. I think Cannonier might land one punch and finish this fight. I think he has the confidence. I think he really wants it. He's motivated. And I want to see fresh blood going up to fight Izzy. Izzy just had a great performance against Costa. He looked unbeatable. So I don't want to see Whittaker and Izzy too, because Izzy kind of made it look easy. I want to see new blood going up and facing the champ Adesanya.
So you're saying Jared Cannonier is going to knock out Robert Whittaker today?
I'm not sure as the Khabib Gaethje fight, but I would like to see that just because I need that new fighter fighting for the championship.
Yeah, it makes things a little more complicated if Whittaker wins. What kind of a chance would you give Cannonier against Israel?
0 chance. 0 chance. I mean, when you look at that division, nobody has a chance just because you got a lot of strikers and you got, Hermanson is fighting soon. And, he's a pretty solid grappler. But I think Khamzat, the Wolves, has to, climb the rankings and get to that point where he's ready to fight for the title. And hopefully his wrestling will take over. Because I don't see anybody standing up with Izzy putting up a fight. He makes it look way too easy. He's the best striker in the game right now. You need an elite wrestler to be able to take him down and control him and pin him down.
And by the way, I see all your glowing posts about Khamzat, you and Lance McCullers. You guys have the great podcast, the Walkout Podcast, which I urge everyone to go check out. I see you guys glowing about him. I can't decide who you're a bigger fanboy of right now, Khabib or Khamzat. Who's number one on your list? Because I'm not sure right now. It seems neck and neck.
They're pretty much the same style, but Khabib is about to retire. So we got to start, building up a new fighter. So, Khamzat is our new guy. So when Khabib retires, we jump on the Khamzat bandwagon and we keep riding until he retires.
And there you are getting personal video messages from Khabib. And I think did Khamzat send you one as well? I mean,
he sent me one after we beat Oakland in the playoff.
Carlos, always a pleasure, my man. Really, your insight never ceases to amaze me. Your analysis is incredible. I love how much you love the sport. And I'm being honest, anyone who's watching right now, go check out the Walkout Podcast. You have 2 incredible athletes in their prime talking about our little sport, MMA, with such passion and love. It's a real beautiful thing to watch, and I love how much you guys are into it. And I hope that you continue to do it well into the off season and whatnot. So enjoy the fights tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, coming up in an hour, the pay-per-view, and enjoy everything going down this afternoon in Abu Dhabi. And thank you as always for joining us here on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Chael, let us turn our attention to the co-main event. And this is a very important fight in the middleweight division. It's the return of Bobby Knuckles, the former UFC middleweight champion, Robert Whittaker, returning for the second time to Fight Island to fight Jared Cannonier, who we have not seen in 13 months, and who a lot of people think, if he wins this afternoon, should be next for Israel Adesanya. By the way, one of those people is the champ himself, the last style bender, who has said Jared Cannonier really excites me and interests me, and I think he should be next if he beats Robert Whittaker. So do you agree that if either Cannonier wins or Robert Whittaker wins, despite the fact that Whittaker just lost to Izzy, 12 and a half months ago, do you think the winner of this fight, regardless of who it is, should be next for the last style bender?
I don't think it's locked in stone, Ariel. Look, I love that idea and I love the theme behind it. I certainly think that Whittaker, with all the heavy lifting that he's done in this organization, should at least have a path back to the championship. I don't think he should be dismissed for too long. I love Cannonier, and I love the mere fact that he has Adesanya's attention, but I don't know that one win back. I think we're going to have to see how it looked. And by the way, what are we going to do with Chimaev? I just think there's some moving parts. I think it's a very interesting division, and this is a good problem to have. But no, I am not sold that just getting your hand raised and being named Jared Cannonier gets you a title shot. No.
Okay, perhaps you have to win, but also win impressively as well. You know, Cannonier had pectoral surgery back in March, in early March. How serious? I mean, I feel like he was on the sidelines for quite some time. How serious of an injury is that? Like, do you think it is possible, considering the fact he looked so good in his first 3 fights, since dropping down to 185, defeating the likes of David Branch, and then, of course, Anderson Silva, and then Jack Hermanson last September, that this can dramatically change who Jared Cannonier is as a fighter?
I think that it's a very real injury in this way, Ariel. There's some injuries, you hurt your foot. Okay, great. I go to the gym every day and I just work upper body. You remember when Sean O'Malley hurt his foot, but he's over by the pool and he's punching mitts while limping on one leg. I only suggest that for you because when you do have that pec surgery, it kind of immobilizes you. You can't really get on a treadmill because you don't want to jar the upper body. So it forces you to be stagnant. It's one of those things that can change a layoff. Not all layoffs are created the same. I know he had to be held up and I know he had to be stopped. Look, he's at full capacity right now, but to answer your question on why that specific injury can linger and take guys a little bit longer to recover from, it's because it kind of shuts you down completely.
You know, I think there is a desire to find some fresh blood for Izzy, and I think a lot of people are almost secretly rooting for Jared because we just saw the Whittaker fight, and in doing so, correct me if you feel otherwise, in doing so, I feel like Robert Whittaker is being disrespected. I feel like people have forgotten just how good this guy is. Solid win over Till, hard-fought battle. I feel like people are not giving him his due. He is, in my opinion, the second best middleweight in the world, and I don't think he gets that kind of respect.
Yeah, so one of the greats ever. If you want to have a top 5 conversation, for sure Whittaker's making that list somewhere. Look, this fight's interesting. I don't know if this is the part where you want to get in the X's and O's, but there's only been one person to ever stand up with Robert Whittaker and not leave face down and embarrassed, and that was Adesanya. So if you're telling me you think Cannonier can beat Whittaker, then you're telling me Cannonier can take Whittaker down, something Yoel Romero had 10 rounds to do and only succeeded twice. I just offer that for you because this match, while we're talking about a number 1 contendership for Cannonier, there's a reason that Vegas has set the line. Excuse me. There's a reason Whittaker's the favorite. Stylistically, it's a good match for Robert, in all fairness.
All right, so hit me with the X's and O's. How does this one play out?
Okay, look, I think that Cannonier is going to be stuck on his feet. I think Cannonier is a very good fighter. You want to box a brawler, you want to brawl a boxer. Whittaker is very technical, which means you want to go out and you want to brawl with him. You're not going to match him skill for skill on your feet, particularly with the layoff. And if you're trying to factor in a takedown, and can Cannonier do it? By the way, he's got to do it at least twice. If it's a 3-round fight and 10-9 must system, he's got to get him down at least twice to win it. I don't like the chances of it. Robert Whittaker wins this fight.
Interesting. Does he stop him?
Robert Whittaker's probably going to have to be out there for a while. Look, if I was to base it on the way that he fought Till, where it was a little bit more systematic, Whittaker, of course, in the Till fight was coming off a loss. You had to check where he was emotionally and mentally. He passed that test. I think you're going to see a more aggressive Whittaker, but you're probably going to get some minutes.
And so I'm wondering what you thought of Whittaker against Darren Till, because that was a little bit of a hard fight to score. They both had their moments. I thought Whittaker looked very good on his feet as well, and Till gave him that kind of props. What did you, because you know, it feels like it was so long ago now, but the talk going into that fight was, where's Robert at mentally, right? He said he was burnt out. Does he have what it takes to get back on track? And I think he quieted those doubters. But what did you make of how he looked at the entire game that he put on display against Darren Till back in July?
I thought he performed very well. Look, there's some guys that are tough to look good against. Like many people thought that fight needed a little bit more action, things along these lines. Ariel, that's a second thought. That's kind of a new phenomenon and narrative to go out there, win, and look good while doing it. Look, in the world of boxing, the motto is, I'll look good next time. Tonight, I'm just going to win. And I do think that we have to remember that. These athletes have a job to do under the 10-9 must system, and trumping everything is finding a way to get your arm raised at the end of the night. That's what Whittaker did. Now, I will concede to you that maybe there was a little bit of apprehensiveness, maybe because he had gone into a fisticuffs in the previous fight and he ends up getting knocked out by Adesanya, that maybe he was a little more reserved. But then I would submit for you again that that's behind him. The old Whittaker's back. He's going to have a level of confidence, and you don't have to be as tactical. Till is a very different game plan. You got to be real tactical. There's certain ways you have to fight him to win. You don't have to do that with Cannonier, not to mention you don't have a choice. Cannonier is going to bring you a brawl.
So, Chael, I think going back to an earlier point, I think that if Jared Cannonier wins this fight, it's a no-brainer. Cannonier, Izzy, fresh matchup. Why not? He has a win over Whittaker. I think if Whittaker wins, things get a little interesting. I think there's a chance they could do Israel Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight title. I think there's a legit chance that Izzy moves up to 205. In fact, Chael, I'll tell you this little nugget. They talked about booking that fight on December 12th. Izzy versus Jan after the Kamaru Usman Gilbert Burns fight fell through. And the only reason why they didn't book it is because Jan and his wife are expecting their first child that week. And so obviously things can change now, but there has been some interest in that fight. So if Whittaker wins, they might go back to that well, or they'll wait to see what happens between Darren Till and Jack Hermanson later on this year. If Jack wins, no brainer, right? That'd be a big win. And then if Till wins, even if he'll be on a one fight winning streak, I think he's a big enough star where they might give him the title shot. Agree or disagree?
I don't know that I argue with you. Izzy versus Blachowicz is an odd one for me. I think that would be a checkers move, and so I would be curious what the chess play is there. Is that to get a belt around Izzy to bring John Jones into the equation? Is it to get a little bit of rub on Blachowicz so that he's more of a household name and then bring John into the division? Look, I think 185 is at a very special spot. The fact that you and I, two excellent minds in this sport, if I may say so myself, can't quite determine a number one contender. Ariel, that's a good position to be in. When you have a division that's got all that depth and all that opportunity, and as good as Izzy is, he has not yet cleaned it out. He's not George St. Pierre, who's having to go through it a second and a third time over. He's got a lot of really good options. I think we should keep them all open. I'm not quite ready to close the book on the idea that it's going to be Cannonier with a win. I'm not ready. I don't have a problem if it is, but I think there's still a little bit of a discussion out there.
And also, I just want to make this clear. I'm not campaigning for Izzy to fight Jan. I actually think it might be a little weird. I mean, he said that he wanted to clean out the division while John was the champion at 205. John leaves, and then he moves up. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? All I'm saying is that's what's been discussed behind the scenes. And I wouldn't be surprised if Whittaker wins, because could we agree on this? If Whittaker wins, there's no way they run that one back right away, right?
I tend to think that same thing, and I don't like to say that for Whittaker. Look, Whittaker needs to have motivation and opportunity like everybody else. There's a reason to get up and go and do this, and he fights very hard fights, and there does need to be a path at some point for Whittaker to get back to the crown. But to your point, in the short term, it is not tonight. It is not through Cannonier, sadly.
All right. Pay-per-view starts 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Earlier in the show, obviously, we talked about the big title unification bout between Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov, and Justin, the Highlight Gaethje, one of the best fights of the year on paper so far. There's still 2 months left. And there's a history of unification bouts in the UFC. There's a great history of unification bouts. You know, the interim title is sometimes joked about, disrespected. Sometimes it's a little bit of a weird thing, but it has led to some big time fights. So, Chael, we have called upon our good friend Michael Eaves to give us a little history lesson of some of the great title unification bouts in UFC history. Take a look at this.
At UFC 254, a division's title will be unified for the 11th time in UFC history, but for the first time on Fight Island. In the lightweight division, defending champion Khabib Nurmagomedov looks to stay undefeated and cement his GOAT status.
Khabib Nurmagomedov mauls people. He's the guy that everybody has been saying for years is the best lightweight on the planet.
Standing in his way, the interim title holder, Justin Gaethje.
That's it. Justin Gaethje, the UFC's interim lightweight champion.
Do you not want that on you? Why'd you just throw that off?
Wait for the real one.
Now, history tells us the advantage goes to Gaethje, with interim champions going 6-4 all time in unification fights. The most recent example, just over a year ago, UFC 243, when interim champ Israel Adesanya finished defending champion Robert Whittaker in impressive fashion.
Whittaker nearly out on his feet. Adesanya trying to close it out. Israel Adesanya is the undisputed king of the middleweights.
However, this is not uncharted territory for Khabib. His last fight, also a title unification fight, and he left no doubt who the real champ was.
Nurmagomedov under the chin, there's the tap! Khabib Nurmagomedov, 28-0!
So on Saturday at UFC 254, will Khabib continue his dominance and retain the belt? Or will the interim champ, Gaethje, follow in the footsteps of Conor McGregor, Georges St. Pierre, and Randy Couture and defeat the defending champion to unify the lightweight title?
How about Michael Eaves with the history lesson? I love that. And again, there have been some amazing undisputed title fights, unification bouts, if you will. And I have a feeling that we'll be able to add this one to the list in a few hours' time. You see the numbers right over there from these two gentlemen. 18 finishes for Khabib Nurmagomedov, 20 finishes for Justin Gaethje. And how about that winning streak? 28-0 for Khabib. And the longest winning streak, of course, of Gaethje's career, 18 in a row. But really, it's those two losses that he suffered after the 18 victories that changed his career forever, made him into a better fighter. And since then, he has, of course, won his last 4 in a row. All right, Chael, now let us welcome in the voice of the UFC, Jason Anik's brother, the one and only, the mustache Jon Anik this time. And by the way, Jon, and I do want to tell all the crazy fans on YouTube who are stickler for these things, yes, I know the fights are going on right now. We are taping this on Friday because obviously Jon can't be in the same place at the exact same time, 2 different spots. But when do you decide, I just want to know, when do you decide when you're going to rock the mustache or go beard, clean? Because you're like a chameleon. Every show, it's a different look. How do you come to that conclusion?
Well, I have a mustache most of the time when I'm at home. My wife cannot stand the mustache. The thing about the mustache is, though, unlike a beard, if you screw it up, if you take a little chunk out that needs to be in there, you got to shave the whole thing. So oftentimes when you don't see me with a mustache, it's because I've screwed it up trying to shave it the day before. So I never really think too much about it. I mean, I do give myself a skin fade every 4 or 5 days. So I think I'm more concerned with what's up top or not up top on fight night. But we're going with the mustache for this big fight. And hopefully the masses can somehow deal with it and not be too distracted by it.
It feels appropriate. And Chael, I'll ask a follow-up. That doesn't count as one of my one that we decided early on that we would each ask a question here. So that was, you know, that was on the house. You're back on Fight Island. You're home away from home for the past few months. And obviously, what a way to end this, right? With Khabib returning to Abu Dhabi and everything he's been through over the past few months, of course, going up against Justin Gaethje. And I know that you get to talk to the fighters. It's such a privilege for you guys working the broadcast because you get these intimate sessions with the fighters just days before the fight. I think a lot of people are wondering where Khabib is at, coming off the untimely passing of his father, Abdulmanap. What kind of insight do you have into where he's at mentally going into this fight?
So we certainly are appreciative of that time with the athletes, but by the time they sit down with us, in the case of a guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov, he has done so much media that you want to be careful not to be too repetitive. So I think more about some of these interviews than others, but I think he had grown weary or at least grown a little bit tired of being asked about his father. So I wanted to think of a creative way to ask about Abdulmanap. So I said, did you ever have any conversations with your father about Justin Gaethje as a possible future opponent? And I thought that was sort of a good point of entry for me. And he was very matter of fact. He said, when we would look at lightweight opposition, it was a pretty simple conversation. We would either talk about guys in the context of being a future opponent for me or a future opponent for Islam Makhachev. And he said they would always talk about Gaethje in a Makhachev context. So they certainly had a healthy respect for him, but they were more expectant that he was going to be on Islam's radar and not Khabib's. But they obviously didn't have any conversations about this fight actually being put together or Gaethje's win over Ferguson or anything like that. But Khabib, he's just so matter of fact. I mean, you know him well. There's nothing he can do to bring his father back. And I think he's trying to sort of lean into that to keep himself from getting too emotional, because if you've seen any of the content out there, as you well know, there's a lot of tear-jerking father-son content to be ingested right now. And Khabib has watched a lot of it.
And Jon, smarten me up on the Michael Chandler situation. My understanding is that Michael Chandler is not free to go grab a soda and a nacho even right now. I mean, he is there all the way until these walks take place. Am I right?
I think you are right. I think he is hopeful that at some point, maybe early afternoon tomorrow, word will come down that both athletes have recovered from the weigh-in, they have hydrated, and they are ready to go. But when I spoke to him last, he wasn't exactly sure when that drop dead time was going to happen. He's 180 pounds right now. I just texted with him. He's happy to have a full stomach. But it is a weird circumstance with him. I can tell you guys, we are going to interview him on the broadcast, but he is going to bed tonight, still not 100% sure that he's not competing at UFC 254. It's crazy.
I want to ask you about Justin Gaethje, though, because he's now getting a chance to fight for the second time in this pandemic. And I felt when he fought Tony Ferguson at UFC 249 in that empty arena in Jacksonville, I actually felt he benefited from the fact that there was no one in attendance. Volkanovski told me earlier this week that he felt a little flat because there were no fans. So some guys are reacting differently. But I think because Gaethje sometimes gets a little too excited, the fact that no one was there, the fact that he could hear Trevor Whitman and only Trevor Whitman actually kept him at a 7, which was great for him. Right. How do you feel he will respond this time around? And by the way, do you think he has an advantage because he's been through that and Khabib hasn't?
I think you set that up well. I think if you read into Khabib's comments this week, he doesn't like the lack of a crowd. He likes having fans at the hotel. He likes the noise that comes with a fight week. So I thought on the Khabib side, that was pretty telling for him to outwardly and publicly say, I'm really not liking this vibe and this atmosphere. I think maybe a touch too much was made of just how good Gaethje was in that particular setting. Certainly, I think it would be ignorant of me to counter your point and dismiss it as a possible advantage. Gaethje has proven that he can compete in this setting. For me, Jan Blachowicz is the poster child for being able to compete in this setting. I mean, that guy shined more than any athlete has without a crowd. But I do think it's a factor. And if you tell me that for Dominic Cruz, having not competed since 2016, that was not a disadvantage for him walking out for the first time in 4 years without a crowd to get him going, killed Dom. I'm not trying to take anything away from Henry Cejudo, but there's no doubt to just dismiss this climate as a possible factor is ignorant. So I won't do that, but we'll see if Gaethje can excel again. This is obviously a different challenge in front of him than Tony Ferguson.
All right, John, I'm turning to you for inside information, but there's a bubble going on and you're in the bubble. So I feel like you would have the information. Look, Adesanya has made it very clear that he believes Jared Cannonier becomes the #1 contender if Jared Cannonier beats Whittaker. However, I haven't heard anybody officially state that. Has that been stated? Is this a #1 contenders match?
Yes, I believe Dana White is looking at it as such. And I watched your whole breakdown on Robert Whittaker. And I would tell you on the Whittaker side, he is dismissive of the narrative that his championship experience is going to be a big factor. He just thinks skill for skill that he's better than this guy everywhere, as humbly as he can say that. He understands from a strength standpoint, he's fighting a former heavyweight. But I have never seen Robert Whittaker. And by the way, I called the Tough Smashers final on the Gold Coast in 2012. I have never seen him more comfortable in his own skin, more healthy mentally and emotionally than he is right now. I do think for a lot of these long reigning champions, even though Whittaker didn't have all these title defenses because of some interim circumstances, when you're a long reigning champion, there is something liberating about that belt going away. And I think it sort of bared fruit in that performance against Darren Till. I think Whittaker is liberated not being the champion. And while I hate to lean too much into a fighter meeting in terms of being predictive about the fight, Whittaker has never sat across from me and been in a more comfortable place and with a more understanding of his own self than he is right now. He's a mature guy. He was born in 1990, but he's maturing before our eyes.
I love that you dropped that. Okay, so on the flip side, what about Cannonier? Biggest fight of his career. He's won 3 in a row since going down to 185, but hasn't fought in about 13, 14 months, right? September of last year was his last fight. Had the pec surgery, which is a very serious surgery to have. And he was supposed to fight back in March, of course, against Robert Whittaker. For him, the stakes are so high. Everyone is talking about him. Izzy's putting him over. What's he been like this week?
Well, when I saw him, he was very excited, obviously, that Adesanya would put him over because he believes he is the #1 middleweight contender. And of course, he has a great chance to prove as much. He's a very spiritual guy. When we were quarantined at the Holiday Inn Express in Las Vegas, he's outside meditating back up against a tree for hours at a time. I mean, I'm running in the parking lot and he is just sitting there in his own element. So another guy who is super thoughtful. And another guy who I just doesn't overthink fight night. He's got a lot of Gaethje qualities that he really enjoys fight night itself more than most. But he understands when you get called out by the champion, the way he is called out. And Adesanya has consistently put over #1 contenders, Costa and now Cannonier. Cannonier believes he is fighting for a title fight. And he also, I mean, he was dismissive of Whittaker's championship experience as well. He just thinks that past history is really not a great indicator of future performance. And I think a lot of us who have followed Cannonier's career, dating to the beginning when he was an FAA employee. We're just excited to see what he can do with the showcase, because there were a lot of people that doubted whether or not he had a championship ceiling after that Glover Teixeira fight, and he has certainly answered those naysayers and then some.
And John, what is your sense being around Cannonier? Is he feeling pressure because of the nuance that's what's added to this fight, or is he feeling excitement about it? Does he see this as an opportunity? I know you've been around a lot of guys, and I know sometimes they put on a face, but what's your sense?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think Ariel is wise to bring up the torn pec, because if you talk to any MMA handicapper, layoffs are a big deal, and major surgeries like that are a big deal.
We lost Anik.
Thought maybe it was just me.
He's in a dead freeze, right, on everyone's screen. Yeah.
And Chael, just have one, unless you have another one, I just have one more on the back end, and that's it.
Sure. That's great, Ariel.
Do you have any more?
No.
Okay. Oh.
Sorry, Wi-Fi cut out on me. Just do a pickup.
Do you want to just answer that question from the top?
3, 2. Yeah, it's a good question, Chael. Absolutely. I think there is no doubt that Cannonier is one of these guys who thrives under pressure. And you can imagine him sitting home watching UFC 253 to hear the champion, after a dominant performance like that, call his name. I think this just elevates the fight. It elevates Cannonier. I think it stands to reason that it could elevate Whittaker as well. But I think it's a sage point by Ariel to sort of inject the torn pectoral muscle into this conversation, because if you talk to any MMA handicapper, layoffs like this following a major surgery are something that give them pause when they go to the window to bet on a guy. Now, if any athlete is well equipped to handle that adversity, and Cannonier is training with great training partners at the MMA lab, I don't expect it to be a major factor. But I don't love backing guys off a year-plus layoff. And the fact that Whittaker competed in this setting on Fight Island less than 3 months ago, I think it stands to reason that could benefit him here on Saturday.
John, I want to ask you one more question before we let you go. Obviously, a big story earlier this year was the return of Walt Harris, coming off, the shocking passing of his daughter, Nia Blanchard. And you're a dad. Chael's a dad, I'm a dad, and we all have daughters. And I mean, I think I speak for all of us, can't even wrap our heads around how he was able to walk out there against Alistair Overeem and perform the way he was, answer all the questions, and just have the kind of courage that he did and the strength that he did in there. This time around, I think luckily for him, he's sort of flying under the radar, right? He doesn't have to do as much media. There's less of a spotlight on him and whatnot. Could you tell us, where's he at right now? Several months after that Overeem fight, how is he handling everything? How's he doing?
Well, it's a good question. And I think the biggest factor is that he is now 2 fights removed from that circumstance in his life. He was in a terrible place going into the Alistair Overeem fight. And yet, if maybe any referee other than Dan Miragliotta is on the assignment, he might get a TKO win. And then the whole narrative changes. He's unbeaten in 5 straight. And maybe he doesn't have to reassess some things. He feels like mentally and emotionally, he wasn't ready to fight Alistair Overeem, and he's ready to fight Alexander Volkov. We'll see if that produces the desired result. I didn't call the fight against Overeem, but I think everybody, to a man, to a woman in that room, felt like they were staring across a guy that has started to move out of the mourning process and is really focused on how he can affect change and help people that are dealing with a similar circumstance.
Well, we're not supposed to root for people in this business sitting in these chairs, but how could you not root for Walt Harris and his family? So that's one of the 6 fights happening on the main card that you will be calling beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern exclusively on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. And Chael, I know you like a good promo. Do yourself a favor and go find the promo that Jon Anik cut when he got his scrum. I mean, I remember Jon Anik when he was just hosting MMA Live. This man had a scrum earlier this week, Chael, and he cut a promo on the disrespect that he has gotten from the MMA community for just being the hard worker, but not the talented guy. Chael, you got to see this promo. It was tremendous stuff. You would love everything about it.
I'm in. I'll check it out. Thank you for the tip.
Well, hey, I appreciate that. My first media scrum in 9 years, but you want to be known as a guy who prepares, but eventually you get a little bit frustrated when people say, yeah, he works hard. Well, it's like, well, am I any good? But hey, man, one show at a time, AH. You know the drill.
That's right. That's right. I remember New York, UFC 137, the big reveal at the press conference.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. BJ Penn, Nick Diaz. Great memories. John, a pleasure as always. Good luck on the call.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Always good to see you guys. Thanks, Chael. See you.
All right. Once again, thank you very much to John, and good luck to him and the team as they call the pay-per-view, which kicks off at 2 p.m. Eastern, Chael. I don't know if I've mentioned that enough on today's program. It kicks off in a matter of moments, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, over on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. It's a rare 6-fight main card, Chael, so we're getting a bit of a treat here on this matinee. 6 fights total. This is the lineup. Magomed Ankalaev against Iwan Cutelaba, which is a fight they've tried to book multiple times. Remember, they had that bizarre fight back in February that lasted 38 seconds and was somewhat controversial. Lauren Murphy against Lilia Shakirova, Jacob Malkoun and Philip both making their official UFC debut on this card and in a main card spot. Alexander Volkov against Walt Harris, Robert Whittaker against Jared Cannonier, and of course the big one, Khabib Nurmagomedov against Justin Gaethje. Of those 6 main card fights, obviously we talked about the top 2, but the rest, anyone kind of sticks out? Is there a fighter, a storyline, a matchup that sticks out to you?
Yeah, you know what? I like Harris and I like Volkov. Was that fair game? You threw a few at me, but is
Sure.
that what? Because I think that Volkov is often overlooked. I mean, he's one of these heavyweights with incredible range, and he knows how to use it. There's a blueprint to beat him, but standing on your feet and trading with him is not that. I think Harris knows that. Harris is a very smart fighter, Ariel. If you ever sit and visit with him, you'd be very impressed with his IQ, not only to break down himself, but he can give you good analysis of other people, which means he's broken down Volkov, which means he understands he needs to make it a little gritty, throw some of those hands, clinch him, get him into the fence. I think that Harris has the skills as long as he brings his mind with him.
You know, as you know, Stefan Struve on this card as well. Volkov and Struve, very tall heavyweights, right? Similar builds. The main difference, in my opinion, between the two, Struve, throughout his career, never really understood or appreciated the range that he possessed, right? The length that he possessed. I never felt like he used his length to his advantage. He could have had an amazing jab throughout his career. I feel like Volkov does a much better job of using his length to his advantage. He understands how tall he is, how long he is. Do you agree or disagree?
I fully agree with you. Look, Volkov's a very smart fighter. There's positions you can get in him that he still leaves a little bit to be desired. I can remember the fight with Derek Lewis when he was keeping Lewis at bay, but once Lewis got on top, Volkov didn't really have an answer for that. Now, my goal here is not to knock him. It's to share with you that if I have that assessment of him, certainly he has it within himself. So there's a way that he needs to fight this fight, the same way as Harris needs to get inside, make it dirty, maybe push him in the fence, get his hands on him, get that body lock, and get him to the ground. Volkov needs to use that range you're talking about. He's very good with some of the front kicks, but he doesn't always use them. Sometimes he likes a guy to get close to try to use the elbows and the knees. Look, elbows and knees are very good if a guy penetrates your first line of defense, which is range. Then you bring those elbows in. Sometimes Volkov gives up that range to go to the elbows and knees. I think he should use that as a secondary offense, not a primary one.
And of course, just moments ago with Jon Anik, we spoke about Walt Harris and his story, and I'm sure everyone's still thinking about him and rooting for him, wanting the best for Walt Harris and his family. So that fight going down on the pay-per-view main card. And by the way, Chael, I hope that Miss Brittany has prepared the charcuterie board and that you're not going to make it now, because you don't want to miss Magomed Ankalaev versus Iwan Cutelaba. These two guys are like, it's like the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. They are going to combust in there. I don't think this fight lasts very long. So please tell me everything's already laid out and ready to go.
Everything's laid out. I can't pronounce those names. Those names you just said sound like something that I will find on the charcuterie board, but I agree with you. It's going to be a good match.
All right. Back to Harris Volkov, your official pick.
Okay, I like Harris in the fight. I just do. I think he knows how to get inside. I visited with Harris before, and he really impressed me with his mind. I realize this is a physicality contest, but he's a very astute guy. And when you do talk about Volkov, there's ways to beat him. In all fairness, we've seen Volkov top 5 heavyweight at one point in his career, steer in the top 10. I've got no problem with his skills. I just think Harris understands to get inside, make it dirty, use the 10-9, get some minutes out there. Don't go out there looking for the oohs and the ahs of the crowd and trying to stop him. Be methodical. Have this good approach. I think Harris is going to beat him.
All right. And earlier you told us that you think Robert Whittaker is going to beat Jared Cannonier. You're sticking with that one?
I'm sticking with Whittaker, and you know what? I don't think he's going to have that hard of a time doing it. I really think many people have forgot just how good and dominant Bobby Knuckles was and still is in my mind.
I couldn't agree more. All right, this is the big one. Khabib Nurmagomedov looking to extend his perfect record to 29-0. By the way, longest winning streak to start a UFC career. Anderson Silva, 16-0. Funny enough, he's fighting in 7 days. If Khabib wins this afternoon, he will be number 2, 13-0 to start his UFC career, going up against Justin Gaethje, who, like I said, has won his last 4 in a row. Who wins? Who's the pick?
Khabib. I don't want to bury my lead. Let me rip the Band-Aid off. Khabib wins this fight. But partner, one thing you and I are going to be talking about next week, regardless if that prediction of mine is right. One thing we're going to be talking about is just what a dominant fight this was. Whichever one of these guys wins is going to dominate. I'm talking 5 rounds to none. I'm talking 4-1. Either Gaethje touches him up on his feet and it's rinse and repeat for 25 minutes, or Khabib pushes him in the fence, gets him down, and tangles those legs and begins to bludgeon. These guys are studs, but their skill set is too polar opposite for this to be give and take, push and pull. One guy is going to dominate, and he's going to do it bell to bell. I am predicting Khabib.
All right. Well, my watch says that the time for talking Chael is officially over. We are done. I mean, we have talked about this fight for the past 4 or so months. I think we are done. And they are telling me
something tells me it's going to be another minute before we fade to black and roll the credits. Okay, you're not really known for brevity, but give me your best shot.
Yes. Well, they tell me that the pay-per-view is about to start, so we got to get ready. We got to put our jammies on. We got to get our charcuterie boards. We got to get everyone to know that the pay-per-view is going to start in the afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. It's a 6-fight main card, and it's headlined by Khabib versus Gaethje. Go watch it. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chael. Thank you, team. We love you. Enjoy the fights.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.